When I wrote the introduction to Hours Away, I wanted to take the chords that AJ had given me and make them into something very unique and memorable.
Hours Away is started out as a simple yet personal acoustic guitar song, and when I started to collaborate with Gage on songwriting, it ended up becoming something a lot more than what I expected it to be.
I first started thinking about, okay, what's the feeling that I'm getting from the song? And it's very dancey, very funky, alternative, even a little bit reggae influenced. And it made me think of bands like Sublime and the Red Hot Chili Peppers. So I wanted to apply that feeling to the arpeggios. I was offering the chords.
So we decided to start out the song with a very melodic type of riff.
The intro piece, which is essentially it's just the opening, I'm barely touching the hi-hat, and there's just like a really good groove going for like the intro of the song. We got that boom, boom, boom.
And then with the DJ being in the band, we decided to have it more harmonized with that melody.
When I first heard the song, I thought it was great. I loved what Gage was playing at the intro. I loved what AJ was singing about. I loved just the kind of vibe of the whole song. And when I first heard Gage's part out, I thought, maybe I could do something to kind of complement what he's doing. So I just messed around with the G minor pentatonic scale over on the higher notes of the guitar. And basically the minor pentatonic scale is what a lot of guitar players use to solo, myself included.
And then beyond that point, it was a matter of making sure that all three arpeggiations had a unique identity from one another. So the way I did that was I just did a straight arpeggio for the first chord. Then on the second chord, I added a hammer-on and a pull-off to the E string. Third chord, I added some open strings to give it some sonic distinctions between the first two chords.
The main progression of the song is about 3 chords, yet I add 9 chord to just add a little bit more harmonic variation in it.
And then there's a little snare fill, and we go straight into, I guess it's like the second part of the intro. It's like the answer to that initial part, where we have Gage's guitar with coming with guitar melody, and then DJ comes in, and then everybody's in. I do a little fill, I hit the crash cymbal, and that's basically how the song gets started.
I decided to come in a bit beats after their intro started, and I came in with the bass, which I feel carries the foundation of the song.
Hours Away remains virtually unchanged from how Gage and AJ actually taught me the song back in October of 2019 when I joined. So, recording the song was fairly straightforward. I was just following the progression of the songs, kind of plugging along or chugging along with the guitarists.
Now, from this point on in the song, we move on to the verse.
For the verse, so I'm not really doing anything complicated. I'm just simply doing just like arpeggiated notes of the chords that AJ is doing throughout the verse, and that just kind of like complements what he's doing and what I'm doing and what Gage is doing. And my goal throughout this whole song was just to complement what they are doing.
The side snare idea was something that I was inspired by, like Joshua Dunn from 21 Pilots and the drummer from Chicago. There's a few other drummers who I would see using the side snare.
That's the ballad snare. So my normal snare drum I like to have tuned pretty high, kind of like medium to high tuning. But some songs just sound really cool with like a really low tuning. It's just like a deeper and kind of drier sound.
And so to create some variation between the choruses and then the verses, I went ahead and in the 2 verses I used a side snare, and I keep the groove going there.
Now, this is a very personal song for AJ, and it's also very catchy too, so I want to make sure that I write something that doesn't step on him at all. So if anything, I thought of like my guitar part and AJ's vocals as doing a duet, so I wanted to write something that complements him rather than overshadowing him. Sort of thought of it as like counterpoint.
They are like the base of the song, and I'm just kind of like the cherry on top, you know? If Hours Away was an ice cream sundae, there would be like the ice cream and the sprinkles and the chocolate syrup, and that would just be like that little cherry on top.
The way that made a lot of sense to me was that I did straight arpeggiations when he was singing pretty constantly for the first like part of each phrase in that verse. And, I get arpeggios of E flat major, G minor, C minor, and B flat major. Those are the 4 chords of the song.
Another thing you'll find me doing a lot throughout the song is these little drum fills between the kick and the snare. Like, you almost don't even notice them, because typically when drummers think of a drum fill, they think of something where they have to like move around the drum kit or something, or they have to hit a tom or something like that, or it has to end with a cymbal hit. And that's just not necessarily how it needs to be. You can make a groove a lot more interesting by simply adding in little things like that, where you're kind of having a conversation between like your kick drum and your snare drum.
About halfway through the progression, I start to see some little cracks in AJ's vocal phrasing where I can throw in a couple of little licks or moments where the melody just kind of jumps out all of a sudden, like a little opening for me to just kind of inject something unique there. And then, as far as my songwriting contributions, 2 Hours Away, that is almost it.
By the time I get to the chorus, like the first chorus, for example, I switch it up to a double time feel on the hi-hat, so I'm going basically just twice as fast now. And, the energy picks up. And I do a lot of those kick snare fills, and not a lot of toms. I usually use the toms for like transitions between sections.
And in the second verse, to keep things a little bit more interesting, I decided to add a little main riff in between chord progressions, just to add some variety into it. And then for the bridge, DJ came up with the first part of the riff.
I kind of got inspired by Josh Homme by Queens of the Stone Age, and also Zakk Wylde from Ozzy Osbourne, and then he also did his thing with Black Label Society and Zack Sabbath, which is really cool too. Going into
the climax of the song, we're going into the guitar solo, I just start opening up the hi-hats and just hitting them like really hard.
The beginning of my solo is actually inspired by Josh Homme, because if you listen to No One Knows by Queens of the Stone Age, you can actually see and hear Josh Homme actually using that open string, that open E string or C string in his case. And it just complements what he's doing.
And I'm like, okay, this needs to be loud. This is the climax of the song. So I decide to, we're gonna throw in a lot of crash hits all over the place. So I'm hitting the crash cymbals, and I have the hi-hat open. Open hi-hats are loud, so I'm just smacking the hi-hat. I'm smacking the cymbals.
The second half of the riff was something that I made that was inspired by a Weezer song called Endless Bummer, and there's a guitar solo towards the very end of the song that that riff is very inspired by.
actually got inspired by Zach Wilde because he just does awesome vibratos. And it's just so crazy and just confident the way that he does it. So I thought, oh, maybe I can emulate that a little bit.
Really, the only section I added and or changed anything to for this entire song was actually the guitar solo section or bridge section. And I added to this by actually adding a fuzz effect to some of my guitar parts while recording it. And it sounded great when we added that idea into it, maybe a few months prior to us going into the studio and recording, and we loved the way it turned out.
For the song, it was pretty all last minute, because even though I kind of learned the gist of it, I learned it well enough to play it at live shows, basically. I never really learned it well enough for like a recording. And so it was like a few weeks before we actually went in to record, I that was pretty much when it was like, okay, like I gotta figure this out, you know? And that's just me being like a mad procrastinator too.
One of the biggest challenges, though, recording the entire song was actually listening to how Josh was soloing on drums. He has this elaborate drum solo during the outro for that guitar section.
I had gotten the idea for it like the night before we actually went in to record.
My biggest issue was, okay, what do I do here? Do I play really simple? Do I play something complex to try and match up with the drums and make this really cool locking pattern?
It was taking me a while. We actually recorded the song and then we went back and punched that in because I was like, you know, we need this big drum fill here, and the guys were like, yeah, okay, let's do it.
Unfortunately, we were never able to really figure out a nice pattern or rhythm for my playing that fit along with what Josh Columbus was playing on drums. So therefore, we ended up just keeping it nice and simple on the solo section for the bass, and again, just using that fuzz effect, and it got a really, really great outcome.
And that's what takes us out of the guitar solo and then into the next section. So now I'm basically doing the same groove in the loud ending of the song with all the distorted guitars, and I'm smacking the open hi-hats. I'm doing them double time, just like I was in the first chorus. But now everything's just open and I'm just hitting the cymbals more. In the outro of the song, there's some guitar licks that DJ does.
In between AJ's repeating phrase of, "I don't want to be lost again." So DJ plays this riff.
I play to those guitar licks, so he's doing the da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na, and so I'm having a conversation between my kick drum and my snare drum, so he's going like da-na-na-na-na-na-na, and then my kick and my snare are going you know, and then I'm keeping the 16th notes on the ride.
The way it was originally come up with, it's actually a really funny story. Me and AJ were recording an earlier version of Hours Away in Woodland Hills, Los Angeles, with some of our friends, and literally like while we were in the studio, AJ was like, "Gage, can you throw something in here that sounds like it belongs on Weezer's 4th album, Maladroit?" And I thought of the song Death and Destruction, which has like this big sweeping arpeggio after Rivers Cuomo says, "So I'll learn to turn and look the other way." And then I just like in the studio, on the spot, came up with that, and we really liked it, and it really stuck from that point on.
And when I was writing the song Hours Away, I was trying to it was a song that I found very personal to me, and I just the idea of long distance relationships and just kind of like the hesitation that goes into it. That's pretty much what I was tackling when I wrote that song.
And it's just big crash hits to end the song, and then the guitars are fading out and all that, and Gage and AJ do their little licks at the end.
Hope you enjoyed the song, and hope you all are doing well.